Fred will work on I think, why don't we start the meeting?
Okay.
John said he was going to try to come. I don't know where he is, but, and the first order of business is the agenda. Now, I can put the agenda up, so I'm told. This is new to me. Did people look that over? I did attach it to the email I sent out. If that's good enough, I won't bother trying to put it up. If people don't remember it or don't have it, I can apparently put this up on the screen. I can press my copy and then do a share. People have access to it?
I'm okay.
Okay. Are we okay with the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
So, motion to accept?
I make a motion that we accept the agenda.
I
Okay.
second.
So Peggy and then Lynn second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay. And then the minutes, the same thing. Now these minutes, the last meeting we had were actually in January. And if people do have access to it, fine. If not, then I can again apparently put those up with a share button, and I'll give it a try if people don't have access.
Bruce, this is just a question because I finally did all my, read all the stuff I was supposed to have read 4 months ago about, I'll think of the word in a minute, the conflict of interest and open meeting laws.
Yes.
And I think when it's a teleconference, we're supposed to do voice votes on everything.
You're right.
A little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
No, I knew that, but I figured if you said everybody and then said no, you're against it, that would do the same thing. But you're supposed,
Okay.
Everyone is supposed to, we're supposed to do a voice vote. Excuse me, John's trying to. Hi, John. Are you over there?
Yes,
Oh, you want to?
Bruce.
Okay, I'm sorry, John. I will let you in right now. I didn't even see you. No, that's me. You're in. You should be joining now.
There's John.
Okay, and John Reel got in too. Sorry about that. Okay, so they were trying to get in, lost contact there. All right, so we've accepted the agenda. Are people okay with that, or should we go over it again for John?
Sit outside.
Oh,
All right. Now the minutes. Why don't we go to the minutes? Again, do people have access to the minutes, or you want me to try to put this up?
We all got them on email, I think, Bruce.
Okay. Were there any corrections to the minutes? These are again the minutes from January 14th, last time we met. Any corrections? Do people want me to put it up, or you have access?
have access.
I had access. I don't have it now, but I had it.
Okay.
John Campbell needs to unmute.
Oh, John. Oh, you that small.
Okay. No, I'm there. I'm on.
You're there.
I'm perfectly okay, ready to vote for it.
Okay.
Minutes.
So motion to accept.
So move.
Second.
So,
Second.
okay, who was that?
Fred.
Okay. So, and now we're supposed to pick, makes the point, if it's a vote, we have to do a voice vote with everyone. So, Fred, vote yay or nay?
Yay.
Bob?
Yay.
John?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Peggy?
Yes.
Okay. And I vote yes too, so unanimous. Okay.
Oh, God.
Okay, moving right along. The agenda.
I'm impressed with Tom's vacation spot.
Me
I know.
too.
Pretty
It's
nice.
great, it's great out here in South Wellfleet.
Boy, it makes a
Buckle
difference
up.
when you go south.
That's
It's not nearly that warm up here.
what Old Wharf looks like.
Can I go
All right.
over and join you, Tom?
So, reports. So, I have nothing to report that's not going to come out in the other parts of the agenda. I guess the one thing I would say, and a place to look, is that around the property number 30, parcel 14. So that's the property, just to remind people, down by the bike path that we had looked at. We had initially voted 0 to 4 not to accept it. We had numerous questions. It then went, after the meeting, went to the planning board, who voted to accept 3 to 1, and then I heard later it was changed to 3 to 2 to 1, 3 to 2 and 1 abstention. And since that time, I had contacted, I sent another letter to Dan, and I think I notified people with the, but basically a number of our questions were answered at the planning board meeting. Just to remind you that some of the questions were, would this have some impact on the bike path? Was it an area for endangered species? Well, then there were a number of things. Basically, there were two things I thought that remained up in the air. One is that it is an area of the Wildlife, Natural Heritage, and Endangered Species Program. And you can go on that website and see. And basically what that means is that there are endangered, in this case, both endangered species and presumed endangered species on the website. What that means is that that property that needs a MESA review. So I, myself, I haven't had a meeting since, called up the state MESA organization and asked them if there was a way we could get some information on the property before town meeting. They said that they would give the town a consultation. So in other words, if this property were owned by the family who's asking to buy it, they would have to come up with a plan and formally ask MESA about this. They will give an informal consult to the town within 2 weeks. So I wrote a letter to Dan Hort and the Board of Selectmen that basically said that we had some concerns about the property. The one concern was that it was, let me just read it. At the planning board, it said that the NOACs with the family could be subdivided, another house built for family members. So their own property has 2.12 acres. And if they wanted to build a house for their kids, they could use their own property. So that was one concern. A bigger concern, though, was that the NAGSP, the Endangered Species Act, was true for this lot. That is, for the land could be built on, it would have to go through a state environmental MESA review for endangered species. And I told them about the plan. If the state received a plan, that they would be able to act on it. If the proposed area for building is deemed appropriate, it will allay our environmental concerns. However, given the odd topography of the lot and the power line right-of-way, and I can put a copy of this area up if people want me to try to do that, or if you can remember the property, basically it's right across from the bike lane, and so the bike lane is here. There's Kincaid Road, and just on the other side of Kincaid Road is that triangular or piece of property. And really the only place, now this is not in my letter, but the only place where they could build, I think, is on a small area next to the bike path. Otherwise the power lines run right through it, etc. The reason I'm going into all this is because if the State Mesa Review said that that piece was not buildable, I think it's quite possible that the lot would not be buildable. And so the other thing that I wrote to Dan was that, what do we do about a price? The town, if this were to pass, would set a minimum price and have an auction. But what's the value of the land? It's currently assessed at $44,000 plus. If the Mesa Review were positive, the town could increase its minimum bid in what is likely to be a bargain sale in either case. In other words, if we don't know if it's buildable, we're selling a lot to the family ostensibly for them to build on, but it may not be buildable. Is that something we really want to do? Isn't that information important?
Yeah.
Since that time, they've changed the wording. The first plan, and this may be bringing you way back, then I won't bother reading it all, but essentially the family, who sound like really wonderful members of the community, but essentially sent in a note that said, we are wonderful members of the community and we would like to buy the land. There was really no plan attached to it, and there remains no plan attached to it. And so what my concern with this property, and I know we're jumping ahead, but I did do some things in between the meeting and wanted people to know, my concern about the property right now is that the way the board, and I don't have it right in front of me, I don't know if you do, Denny, but for the town meeting, they've essentially said that the property will be transferred from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Selectmen to make decisions on whether to sell the land or not. I think that really puts the cart before the horse still. So we're skipping ahead, but there were a number of things that I did since our last meeting that I did want to pass on to people. So I think we can start here and then go back. Any thoughts about this? Any responses to Denny?
Bruce, just to confirm what you said, that's right. And I questioned why they needed a motion to move it to the Board of Selectmen from the Board of Selectmen, when really it was going to be a movement from the Board of Selectmen to, I forget their name, NOAC or something like
right.
that. And to me, it seems to me that it seems that the town ought to know what the value is and basically go negotiate a purchase and sale agreement with the NOACs, just like they should have done on the shellfishing area.
Right.
So that to me is the proper procedure, and how it's gotten this far, I just cannot imagine, but whatever.
So Bruce, let me just start by thanking you for all the work you've done on this. Once again, I am very concerned about the fact that town, first off, their original argument to us, well, to the town, was they wanted a structure for their family. I'm very sympathetic to that, but they can do that on their own property. They don't need this property for that.
I think that that's true. I've heard that, but I'm not, but I think that is true.
The second issue is, I just do not feel comfortable for the town, you know, for the few $1,000s we're going to get selling this property and the fewer $1,000s we'll get in taxes, giving up a piece of town-owned property, which is open space right now and borders the bike lane. So it has potential for some possible, you know, natural use, especially given the fact it borders the bike lane. I just think it's a very bad precedent for the town to be privatizing what in fact is right now public land. If there was a compelling reason, we were talking about, you know, they couldn't put a house on their own property and they're kids are, you know, want to live in Wellfleet and are low income, I could think about it, but I just don't see the compelling reason here. And I'm very concerned about giving up public land, especially since at this point, we don't have our larger, you know, plan for what we want, what our vision is for our public land anyway. So that's, but that's my position. It's been my position for a while, so I'm not saying anything new here. Should shut up.
No, I think the point's well taken. So even if this land, you know, first of all, I have heard that their land is buildable. Their property also has lines going through it, and so I don't know that for a fact. And if that's not the case, then that would make a difference. My concern is even without that, that's certainly information we can get, but even without that, whether this land is a $40,000 piece of land that they really can't build on, or whether they should have the ability to build on it is a big issue. So I understand to hear what John's saying, that even without that, why are we giving up land that's near the bike path that may have some value and it's an endangered species connected, et cetera. That aside, you know, so that's one response. I mean, I'm not certain I would stop the plan if they didn't have a place for their kids to build, if it were buildable. But we don't know that. We don't know the value of the property. And I totally agree with what, you know, Denny said, that just in terms of the process, this process is what happened with Hilda. This is the same. They're coming in, the homework hasn't been done. And if I hadn't sent them a letter that said within 2 weeks, I'm not sure I wrote that in the letter, but with a plan, they can give us a consultation very quickly. You know, I think that is something that could easily be done. I'm not quite sure why it didn't happen. Anyway, any other comments?
Bruce, I was just going to comment to John that it is also adjacent to the National Seashore,
right,
which is dedicated open space. And you always hate to see that sort of thing happen.
Right. So more to my support in what I was saying, yes.
Right.
And I think too that having a piece of open space right next to the bike path, it might be a really good reason to have that once we know how things are developing with the bike path.
And I don't
Bruce,
want
the issue of the endangered species consultation or whatever, if we decide that we're not really in favor of this at all, is it worth pursuing that, or
that's a good point. I mean, I'm not as convinced as some. I don't see this as high priority property, frankly, and I think we want to be careful about saying that, you know, about if every piece that comes to us we're saying, you know, this ought to be in conservation, then we run into some problems. I don't personally feel like this is a great piece of property, except that it is a property that has endangered species, number one. And number two, I'm repeating myself, but the process is such that we don't know what the value of the property. And this comes to town meeting and they're saying, trust us, we'll do it again. You know, we don't know what that means. So I do hear you, Tom. And yeah, if I'm outvoted and people just say we don't want to do it anyway, then I agree. If we do decide that there's a purpose to this, then I can send another letter and say that we've supported it. So I guess, anyway, any other comments on it?
What is why is it being transferred from the selectman to the selectman? I don't understand what's going on there.
You want to take a shot at it, Denny?
Well, I'll try. I think it's an attempt to short circuit the normal course of events. The people who are pushing this have some influence on the Board of Selectmen, and so they're trying to get a positive town vote that would then not set a price. And to me, that is not right. I mean, the townspeople have a right to know what's going on here in vivid detail.
Just to say it from another point of view is, you know, the transfer of this property takes a 2/3 vote. just from the 3 to 2 to 1 in the planning board, this is very iffy. If they want, in my opinion, if they want to be successful with this, in other words, if there's a real case that this land should be sold to the owners, or the abutters, then it's in their interest to go through these steps to make sure that, you know, our questions are answered. So I think from the other side that may be the case, but I think that if they, again, for my own vote, if I were to hear that they can't split their property, in fact, that's not correct, and that, you know, this is a buildable lot, you know, I would really at least give it a thought. I know there are other members of this committee who wouldn't, and if it's a majority, maybe we should just take a vote on that first and then go forward. But for myself, I would see that I don't hear it. Those questions have not been answered, and instead they've written this thing that says that, and I think it's going to backfire because you only need a third plus one vote, and it doesn't happen. So I think some, yeah.
Bruce, if I can, I think you need to keep in mind that you're answering the question that is asked. And the ask is, do you want to go from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Selectmen without having any information?
Right.
And to me, that's an easy answer.
No.
The answer is clear.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me ask it so we can. Any other comments on it?
So Bruce, do you want a motion that you send a letter saying that the Open Space Committee unanimously object to the idea of a town-to-town transfer or selectman-to-selectman transfer? Is that what you're asking for?
Well, so that's what, does it make sense to should we just do that and leave it at that? I mean, they've set up this warrant. Now there's some time. I mean, if there weren't any time, I don't know if there's room to amend the warrant article, but if there isn't, we can just do that, and I will not pursue any further letters or anything to them.
Well, I think your comment about MISA is appropriate.
I do too.
And that would help determine a fair pricing of the parcel.
Right.
I agree with that.
So we could include that in the letter, certainly. Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
And Bruce, could you remind me, what is the status of the town warrant at this point?
I'm not sure. My understanding is that there's going to be a vote for a couple of articles and for the change in Board of Selectmen on June 15th. I don't even know if that's gone through. And then they were talking about the town meeting in the fall.
I think I heard an October date on that.
Yeah, yeah.
So this would come up if it is voted favorably, it would come up at that meeting.
At the town meeting in October, correct. But I think in answer to your earlier question, I don't believe that the town warrant is closed. They would be crazy to close it before they knew when the town meeting was. But who knows?
Okay. Okay, should we take, you want to say that again, John, in the form of
You have to unmute, John.
Oh.
My motion is that we send a letter to the selectmen saying that the Open Space Committee unanimously opposes the Board of Selectmen transfer to Board of Selectmen process. And there are several reasons for that. And one of the reasons is that we haven't even had the MESA consultation, so we have no idea of the value of the property. Okay. And there are other issues besides that the Open Space Committee has, but those are the primary reasons at this point.
Okay. So again, we're voting to not support for the reasons John just gave. A second on that?
Second.
I second.
Okay. So again, we have to go through Bob? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Fred?
Yay.
Lynn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yay.
okay, and John just said,
Yes.
okay. And I vote yes too. So it's unanimous.
Peggy.
Peggy.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Bruce,
Three,
Bruce,
six,
Peggy.
7.
Oh, Peggy, sorry. How did I do that? Oh, I know, because it's Michael.
Because it says Michael.
Sorry, Peggy.
We have a
I
lot
did.
of computers. They all have names.
What was that?
Bruce,
Yeah,
I saw John Reel's name come up and it just,
I did too, but I haven't seen him. I don't know whether he went on and got off, but I don't see him on the side anymore. So whether he had trouble and just didn't call or where that's at.
I was asked for a password and I was wondering, that was a little different.
I'm sorry?
I was asked for a password and I went back and got it. But I wondered if that made a difference.
That seems to be the new procedure of Zoom.
Okay, security.
Although there's some way to avoid that, which the selectmen do when it's a public meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Vice Chairman's report, anything, Tom?
Nothing new.
Okay. That is. Property management, Fred, anything on that?
I finished all the properties that are in the Conservation Commission notebooks before I went to Arizona. The only ones I didn't get to weren't in the book, the ones that we recently transferred to Conservation. I thought maybe you got to those after I left. The other thing I've been trying to get to is to look at town properties that are vacant. I'd like to get to as many of those I can before they get grown up in weeds and poison ivy and so on, but I don't know how much I'll get done this spring.
Okay. The other part of this, if people remember, and again, I'm going to use this because I think it fits, but we had talked about, I feel a little guilty, Fred, that I have not finished up the part that you so diligently worked on, but I will do that. But we did go to the Conscom and make the recommendation that we look at least all the town properties and come up with a plan. Conscom was very supportive of that. And in fact, you know, as we were talking about it, we were saying, gee, it sounds like a 5-year plan, you know, something that I think drives fear into the hearts of, I mean, no more. But Hillary said that there may be some grant money, in fact, available. And so that if we could get someone to help us with the writing, I think what we're doing, in fact, really is the 5-year plan. What John had suggested at our last meeting is that part of the process of looking through these properties should be to come up with an overall plan in terms of what properties we want to protect, et cetera, so that process has begun. Any other comments on that?
I think the problem is for this to be an effective meeting, we can't do it on Zoom. We have to be in a room with the maps in front of us. And so I think this is something we'll have to go on hold for at least several months. Sadly, because it's something I think we should do, but I just don't see how we can do it effectively without all of us being in a room with the maps and getting some sense of what our vision is. The Frederick Law Olmsted vision that we have for Wellfleet.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay, trail guides, Lynn and Bob. Anything?
Lynn, you're muted.
I don't think we do have any.
Hello?
Hello, Lynn. Gotcha.
Nothing new. We have 3 trail guides, I think, that will need reprinting soon. And we made a note that there were going to be map changes on 3 of them. I'm not sure if that's the same 3, but we'll obviously look into that. I have the list of the ones that have map changes. It's in the minutes from January.
Right.
So otherwise, nothing new. No one's really using trail guides at the moment.
Is there any
Yeah,
thought
'cause
to
a lot of
putting
people are using the trail.
signage up to wear your masks and maintain social distancing and all that stuff? Or is that just self-evident?
Putting maps up where?
Each of the trails.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I would comment that that is a suggestion you should make to the CONSCOM. Since it is their care and custody, they will probably like that suggestion, but just as a matter of procedure.
Okay. What do you think, Bob? Should we do that?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Not everybody does know because many people come from other areas here. Park Slope, people don't always keep rules.
yeah. I will have to say I've been out in virtually every day, either biking or hiking, and I've been really impressed with the wonderful protections that people are taking. It's very rare. Occasionally with bicyclists that doesn't happen, but with the hikers, Great Island yesterday, there's not one hiker out there who didn't have a mask. So,
Well, the New Yorkers haven't arrived yet. Some of them have.
Yeah.
I think the New Yorkers know about the mask. It's people from Iowa that I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah, right.
all right. With the elementary school, Bob?
Well, we have not done anything with the other people since it isn't in session.
Right. My assumption. So maybe next year.
Maybe. No virtual walks.
Okay. With the Conservation Trust, I think the biggest thing is the land by the yacht club. And, you know, if you want to describe that, Denny, I have been out of the area for a while, so.
Well, as you know, we're trying to get to closing on the, well, for us, the first step would be 18.5 acres, and the second step would be 1.5 acres. And it's been a long process, and we just extended the closing time to mid-July. But everything's on course, and it looks like it's going to happen. It's a spectacular area. It's on the ridge above the Herring River, and it's never been built on. There may have been some Native Americans there once in a while, and several of us have wandered that area illegally or whatever over the years, but it is really something else. And so we're just holding our breath that nothing happens. We've got the approval of the Cape Cod Commission, which was in your last meeting minutes. And that was a unanimous approval by the Cape Cod Commission to proceed on this transaction. The next step is for the land court to be happy with the plan, and that's really the paperwork plan, not the concept. And they're working on that, and we got word today that they found, well, to back off, when they review the plan, they have to review the entire Chequesset property, all 105 acres. And they found a couple of boundary markers that are off by 1/100 of a foot or something silly like that. And so they're going through that process. But from there, when they sign off on the paperwork then goes to the planning board. And I've talked to a couple of the planning board members. They know what we're up to. We're trying to present it so that they have 0 degrees of freedom. And And it's called an ANR plan, an approval not required. And all they have to do is deem that it is an approval not required plan. And they appreciate that, you know, a couple of them appreciate that this is beautiful virgin territory and certainly what open space is all about. So I'm pretty comfortable that we'll get there. I don't want to do anything that jinxes it, and so we try to react as best we can. So that's where that is.
How many acres is it, Danny?
It's 20 acres in total, Bruce, and it's a long stretch along the Herring River from up high, and actually goes down to the river in certain places. But there is a slice of land in there that's owned by the National Seashore. So, so it would be abutting the National Seashore there on the east side of the river, if that's east, or maybe south. I get confused there. So it really is spectacular. There's beautiful open areas up there covered with reindeer grass and pine trees, and it's very photogenic. So,
wonderful.
So,
good luck with that. The only other one.
You want me to comment on piles?
That was the only other one I was going to, but you can.
Can I just ask a question about the first one?
Yep.
The background to that, I don't see anything in the minutes. I thought you said there was. This is.
It's new to me.
Yeah, new to me too.
Yeah,
Okay,
that might have been. This was in January, you know, middle. So it may be that was.
It wasn't discussed at the meeting.
Right.
At the last meeting.
So what is it? A sale?
Yes, it is. It's a sale by Chequessa Country Club to a party in between who is going to immediately turn it over to us.
Fantastic.
So it's wonderful, and the person has been wonderful to work with. So.
Huh.
Yeah, that really is just great.
I have not had permission to really broadcast her name around, although she realizes that it will come out in due course. So.
Okay, and for the piles, that was the only other one I was going to mention, Denny, just because we were involved, potentially the town was going to be involved in that.
Yep. On the piles, we went back and forth with them last fall and early this spring on trying to get a fairly complex transaction together. And that would have involved the Open Space Committee and the town and all that. We have pulled back from that. And because of the funding, our concerns for funding, we've gone back to an easier process to make a proposal, and we did make a proposal. And gee, they wanted more money. And so we said no. And then we thought that was the end of it. And then about 2 weeks ago, I got a note saying, "Are you sure you don't want to send more money?" And I said, "Yeah, but if you want to talk with me before I go back to the full board, I'd be happy to do that." And we got nowhere. So that one's off the boards.
Okay, Lynn, Friends of the Herring River?
Well, the permitting process is moving forward well. There have been hearings, which many of you have attended, I think, and on 3/9, and then a virtual one on 4/30. And they've gone well enough that the subcommittee that's been, the Cape Cod Commission subcommittee, is now recommending to the full committee, and the next meeting will be on June 11th at 3, and you know, anyone who possibly can be present, it'll be virtual of course, is asked to be there to support the project. I'm trying to think, in between in May there are some working meetings that the subcommittee holding to plan out their recommendations. There's a very positive outlook about it. May is Herring River Month. There were going to be walks and other activities. What they have planned is a virtual walking tour of Bound Brook Island. Alice Akwesa and John Portnoy and Barbara Brennesel are putting something together, and it should be out soon. You know, it'll be on the website and on social media. And a newsletter has come out today, I believe. And one article will be on the herring count in the time of this COVID situation, which is also, the herring run started early and it's going well. I think that's additional permits are being worked on, as well as grants for restoring the culverts up at the Count site in Patience Brook, which are in bad shape. I think that's it.
Okay.
A stakeholders meeting is happening while our meeting's happening. So they're talking about wildlife at that.
Okay, the housing partnership.
Not much to report. Lawrence Road is plugging along. It's pretty much on hold until we resolve the water issue, get that decided. Other than that, there's not much. We're meeting this Thursday and I'll figure out what's going on. The only change is that we're going to probably, it's still up in the air, but probably be more demanding in terms of the energy efficiency of the units, rather than originally it was sort of suggested, and I think we're going to make that language much stronger. I'm hoping we do.
Okay, the CPC, Bob?
We have a meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and that'll be the first one for quite a while. The Zoom meeting, obviously, and it's mainly about, the wording of the proposals for the warrant.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Bob?
Sure. From the beginning, or?
No, just the last.
Last part was,
yeah,
probably be focused on the wording of the proposals for the warrant.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. NRAB?
Have not met.
Okay.
I think we have a meeting. John Reel is trying to organize something for the next week or two, I guess. But nothing new there.
Okay, for old business, just to remind people again that we do have 2 articles on the warrant. One is map 20, which is the area over by Mayo Beach. There are 3 properties, 11, 12, and 16. And again, those were approved by Conscom, and those are beach areas, and hopefully, I haven't heard how other committees have taken it, but it seems pretty straightforward. The other one is map 35, and 201, 210, and 209. And 210 is that 7-acre piece of property, really nice property that we could not put into conservation for a long time because of the attachment of the seawall that Barbara Wright and the people over there were trying to. That has been settled. It's been, it's now a separate piece of property. And so we are going for the conservation of 210. 201 is just that path that is a long-time path that gives people the right to get to the beach. And 29 is an adjacent wetlands property. Okay, I don't think any other comments on those, or? Let's go through it. Okay. So just a couple of things I wanted to bring up, and then if other people have other things, but for next year, there are a couple of pieces of property. One is that they're on map 30. So if you get a chance to, you don't have to look at it right now, but map 30, there are two pieces, 186 and 188, which are just marshland pieces, wetland pieces that we were going to put in before and it didn't happen. There's also, though, as we looked at this map 30, number 14, there's another piece that looks to be an unbuildable piece of property right next to the wetlands. Down, if from the South Wellfleet store, if you look straight across the marsh, there's a piece of property that's over there. And so if that is indeed, it certainly is on the marsh, it's just the kind of property we've been trying to protect. And as long as there's no problems with it, I think that to lump those three as a suggestion would be one way to go.
Bruce, lump which three?
I'm sorry?
Which three are you talking about?
So it's 186 and 188. Those are right off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then 178 is actually across Route 6.
Okay.
Across from, if you're looking at the marsh, that on the other side of the bike path, if you look straight across that marsh, there's a piece of property. It's about, I think, 0.7 acre piece of property over there. There were two other properties, map 29, 400 and 505, but the last time I talked with Nancy, which was some time ago, those were coming to the town but weren't yet in town control. Those are right along Payne Hollow, and again, are wetland properties. And one of them is the property that connects to that little pond they used to call the ice skating pond here. So that's it.
No, it's 400, and what was the other? 400 and...
it's 400 and 505, and the 505 is not listed. You have to, it's being added.
It's not on the map, is it, Bruce?
It is not on the map now,
Yeah.
That's correct. It's just being added. Okay. The last thing in terms of properties to think about is I went to the Aggers. We had talked about this in the meeting a number of times before, but I went to the Aggers to talk about their property over by Lieutenant Island. And just to remind people, this is property that we thought would be great for the town to buy, but on Conscom, Conservation Trust, basically because of the boathouse that's there, the conservation groups did not want to take the land as it was. And that was an important part of the sale for the Aggers. But I was thinking that if they were to give an easement, that would allow the town access to the water and would not put us in a position where we're responsible for the boathouse. So I bring it up now, not because it's just for people to think about if their ideas pass it by. There are a couple of issues, just to remind you that when we looked back in, somebody from the NRAB found back in 1963 that the town was to have had that road that goes up to the Audubon property, if people know, across from Old Wharf, there's the peninsula that goes out, that the town in town meeting voted to accept a gift of that road. Unfortunately, the best that we could find, that was never recorded. And so it did not happen. So one problem with this is, do we have access to the property? And we have to check on that road. The other is, and I've talked, the Audubon, I hope, we've worked together well with things, but they own the marsh on the other side of the property. So it's not a direct access to the water, if you can hear what I'm saying. But I really, the Aggers have been absolutely wonderful with this. They'd like to get some money if they can for it. But, we have not asked the CPC for anything, and they'd be talking in the range of 10,000 or whatever. This is a negotiable kind of thing with them. I think, so it's something that we could think about. There are problems on both sides of the property, if you hear what I'm saying. I think we'd have to take a look at.
Bruce,
Peggy?
what's the map and parcel, that property?
That property is
On the agenda.
41, parcel 178.1.
Bruce, this was kicked around over and over and over again, you know, in previous years and meetings. Wasn't the issue of easement raised at one time or not?
Well, the reason, no, they were, the first time around, what we were doing is looking at buying the property, and that was not accepted by Conscom. They, you know, again, the issue for the conservation groups is that the boathouse is there and it's an important part of the sale. But it seems to me, and I'm just bringing this up as a proposal, and the Aggers are interested at least in pursuing it. The easement, I think, would remove the boathouse as an issue. And, you know, again, for one of the other properties we're looking at, that 210 over on Pleasant Point, that path that allows access is really what allows access. And, you know, that property could be tied up in private property, and people could say, no, and outside of, you know, kayaking up, there might not be land access to it. The fact that that path is town-owned, and now hopefully we'll get into conservation, allows us access to the water. So that was my thought about it. But, you know, as you hear me saying, I do think that there are some, it's tricky, that whole area over there is tricky. Any comments about any of those suggestions for next year?
Seems reasonable to me.
Bruce, I've come across another parcel that I think you guys ought to be looking at.
Okay.
That is town-owned, that I will send an email to Fred and you.
Yep.
And you can take a look at it and decide whether you want to give it to the committee. But it's basically the marsh that is below the Bayberry Trail. And it's a nice piece of land. Sure. The north side of that is owned by the town. The south side is owned by the Back family, and you know the story there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds terrific.
Yeah, I'll send you guys an email.
Okay. Anybody want to bring anything else up?
Bruce, I think if you're over properties, I think the group should be aware that the AmeriCorps program has been shut down for the year.
Right.
And they're all being dismissed in the next week here. I don't know what that bodes for next year. And so we're just going to have to see.
Right.
So
I guess the only thing I did forget that, I'm sad to hear, but just to bring up, I think that the Conservation Trust did a nice job on question of stewardship. They wrote something up and it's formal. We use the same method that they do to look at these properties, not all the CRs, but that is at the DPW, we have track of the land and that kind of. In fact, I was hoping that Celia might be able to help us with that this year. And sadly, that's not going to happen. But to maybe take a look at doing a similar thing to sort of formalize what our relationship with those property are, the inspections, and working with Conscom and Hillary and Doug about what findings we have for the property.
As soon as we get one word inserted into our policy, which is a nonsensical thing, but I'd certainly be happy to share it with your committee, and I think that would go fine.
Are they going to put a trail up in that property on Chequesset Neck?
John, there probably will be at one time, but we're not rushing any of that sort of stuff. There are some other issues going on with the Hall Road for the sand coming out of the center.
Right, about that.
Yeah. Oh, you know about that. Yeah.
Right.
And we're still a little concerned. Right now, there's really only parking for 2 cars there, maybe 3, and that's a problem in my mind. But we'll take it along as we can get things done on it. But first, let's close.
Right, of course.
Yep.
So, may I ask a question, John Kumbler?
Yeah.
The suggestion about trails, a trail up at the trails,
Plug it in, you can
trailhead.
run out.
Or,
Not done, but sure.
sorry, what was that?
Hey, Bob, you need to be on mute if somebody else is talking.
Sorry.
How do you see a trail map with, a sign about mosques? Do the Conservation Commission do that kind of thing? They put up a sign and a map in a plastic container? You're on mute. John, you're on mute.
Right. I'll ask in Wednesday's meeting if, what our interest is there. I think, I don't know. It's sort of what Hillary and Doug have on their plate, I think, is a lot of what is involved.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a non sequitur in some ways, but the same thing with the idea of a 5-year plan. I actually think it's a good one. I think the idea of getting some grants is a great one. My guess is that at this point, that's at the very bottom of of their list in terms of things that are going on. So something for the future.
Yeah.
We still have the Blash House issue to deal with. It takes up a lot of our time, recently.
Okay.
Has it got worse? Has it got worse now? The sound situation?
Yeah, it's going to get worse. Any other comments as to open space, or should we adjourn the meeting? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Okay. So, John, yay. Lynn?
Yay.
Tom?
Yay.
Bob?
Yay.
Fred?
Yay.
Peggy?
Yay.
Okay.
Bruce. What about Bruce?
Oh, yay. It's unanimous.
There we are.
Okay. We'll see you all around.
Nice to
Hopefully
see
out there on
all.
the
See you guys.
trails.
Be well.
Hope so.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Stay well.
Bye.
Will do.